Yeah, can you tell me what is hosting in JavaScript?
Yeah, so hosting in JavaScript is basically a concept of how we're defining the memory for the variables and functions in JavaScript. So, like traditional, normally what we will say is the like hosting is basically bringing the variables definition on top. But it's not that. It's when JavaScript is trying to compile the program, it what it will do is it will assign some memory to the variables, and those memories were defined given some values which is undefined. So the definition which is coming, like the variables are moved on top, it's basically when they are defined earlier, and they are used earlier, since the memories are already defined before it's used. So they are basically can be accessed on top. So yeah, that's more on, yeah, that's the definition.
Okay, so can the let variable be hosted?
Uh, Technically, let variable is also hosted, but it is not hosted in the same global space. It's hosted in a different, we have a different container for ES6 ECMAScript. So there it is hosted. It can be used, but it will throw an error as it's by defined is using usestrict, and it will not allow us to use it. So it will throw an error.
Okay, so it will be hosted, but what is the variable? What is the what data it will be initialized with?
Undefined.
So I'm talking about let variable.
Yeah, let variable will also be hosted with undefined only, but it will not be. We will not be able to access it. It will not.
No,
It
let
will
will
throw an
not.
error.
Yeah, where will be initialized with undefined, not let. Okay,
Sorry.
let will not be initialized with undefined. Where will be initialized with undefined, not let.
Okay.
Okay, can you
Okay, I
tell
will
me?
have to read more
Yeah,
about it.
what is temporal dead zone? Can you tell me?
Yeah, temporal dead zone is basically as I was defining. When we are trying to use the, like, for let and const, it will be there, and before initializing before initializing any variable with the any data, and using it, then we are basically calling it a temporal dead zone. Like, let's say in the certain point of application we are defining let and const, and we haven't even before initializing it, we are using it on top. So during that time, there will be nothing defined for those variables, those values. They are not in the scope yet. So that's a place where we call temporal dead zone.
Okay. Have you used global variables in JavaScript?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what is the problem with what is the problem with global variable?
So mutation is basically more of the problem here. Let's say if we are using window object, storing something in the window object. So window object can be used by any of the modules or inside any other methods. So and managing it will be a very big of a task. Let's say later on some point of time, some other method is changing, like that we are making it global because it is being used by some other methods across the application. It will be used, and some other component might change it. We will never know who's changing it, and debugging as well as reproducing the issues will be very difficult if we use the global variable like entirely.
Okay. What will happen if you will declare a variable without var keyword?
Without where keyword, if I define a variable,
Yeah.
mm, it will not be defined. It need that keyword to define itself.
Yeah.
Else it will throw an error that this variable is not defined. I'm not sure which one it will throw, syntax error, or it will throw syntax error only, I think,
So the variable will be a
saying that it's
yeah.
not initialized yet. Yeah.
Okay. It will become a global if you're not defining
No,
anything.
it will become a global.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what is use strict?
Yeah, you strict as we were saying, this unknown behavior in JavaScript. To control those unknown behavior, JavaScript has given us this use strict keyword when we are using it on top of the files. entirety in the file will be basically checked with this standards that JavaScript has provided.
Okay.
Whereas in like defining multiple variables with the same name is restricted, and calling using variables before initializing them are like it will throw an error, and during runtime it will throw an error.
Do you know what is closure?
Yeah, so closure is basically a method encapsulated with the reference of its lexical environment. So whenever this method is executed, we will have a copy, we will have a reference of its lexical environment, as well as everything all the data that is inside it, all the variables will also be there. So whenever at any point of time when it is executed, we will have those data as well as reference to the outer environment of its lexical outer environment.
What is the advantage of closure?
With the closure, we can do, like, let's say we have something to execute with with this specific set of data that we want to execute at a later point of time. We can do that. It helps us to encapsulate the data with the method, and
Okay.
it can help us in security format also. Like, let's say something we want to just execute. Let's say in the case of authentication, we are authenticating something. We have some data that needs to be authenticated, but this data doesn't need to be shared with the entire module or separate modules. So in that case, if we are calling that API, which is authenticating and storing that data or doing all the validations in that specific method, then those data cannot be used outside. So this is one use case of closure.
Okay. How can you achieve inheritance in JavaScript?
Inheritance in JavaScript, I believe with using prototype chaining. So we can use properties of different method using this. I'm not well aware of this one.
Okay. So do you know is JavaScript is multi-threaded?
No, JavaScript is not multi-threaded at all. It is single-threaded. Yeah.
Okay. If I want to achieve some multi-threading, is it possible in JavaScript if I want to do some parallel execution?
Yeah, it's not exactly parallel like execution. It's asynchronously we can achieve the same thing. And since it is multi-threaded, all the tasks parallelly we cannot run it. We have to horizontally scale the application to do it parallelly. While if you want to do something asynchronously, let's say we have to wait for some timer, or we have to run an animation, or we have to do something that needs to be executed at a later point of time, like resolving a promise. So that point of time we can use the web browser's API, web API, which is let's say a promise is fetch is also the API, and we can make use of our event loop to do those stuff.
Okay. So how can you do async calls in JavaScript?
So I can explain you the whole process. What happens is, let's say
how many ways? How many ways we can do?
How many ways?
Yeah.
Asynchronous process. Okay, one thing is promise, and the other is async await. We can use these two.
Okay. Have you used worker thread also?
No, I haven't.
Can I do async calls using worker threads also?
Yeah, worker thread. Yeah, we can do worker thread, but yeah, we can do it, but I'm not aware of it. I've heard of it, and somewhere in my project we are using it, but I have not used it right now.
Okay, so you have used promise, right?
Sorry?
You have used promise, right?
Yeah.
Okay, why you make a promise sync?
We want to make promise async because in a normal environment where when we are fetching data from the API, there is some network latency and some execution time from the server is also there. So while our like JavaScript is single threaded, we will not like our like JS engine to wait for those time. And if like we have to wait, then the whole application might freeze up. Depends on the how much the wait is. So we'll let the call get resolved somewhere else in the browser. And once it is all the data is there, then we can resolve the promise. So the purpose of making it async is to not let the browsers to be freeze and to make the proper use of the call stack.
Okay. What is memorization?
Memorization. So memorization is basically like, let's say we have a complex computation and we don't want to do the same computation again and again. We will try to use the concept of memorization. We have something similar in React where we can memorize the entire function, and once the execution for the concept, like when if the given parameters are the same, then if the given arguments are the same, then we will not execute the method again. We will simply return back the values that are already stored there.
Okay, where it is stored?
Yeah. Sorry.
Where it is stored?
In the closure of the method. Like depends on how we are defining. Let's say we are using it in the global method, then maybe in the global method. But if we are creating an instance of that method, then in the method only we can store it.
Okay.
Okay, let me know if that answer is not correct.
Okay.
I think you are trying to like
No,
memory
it's fine.
for.
It's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you can you tell me what are the different ES6 methods you've used?
I have used map, reduce, and this one. What else was that? Filter and arrow functions, as well as this assignment operators.
So you use
Restructuring also.
You have used reduce method?
Yeah, I've used it.
So how do you use reduce? Can you give an example how you use reduce method?
So from my experience, reduce method is very versatile. Use case of it, the word they are saying it is reduce. By reduce, what they are meaning is we will have an like array, and what they will do is do some computation and reduce to its single value. But that's not accurately true. We can basically pass it a callback, and reduce method basically accepts two arguments. One is the function and the other one is the initial value, which is an optional parameter. And in the of a callback, we will pass it some logic. So this logic will contain an accumulator. Like again, this callback will have two arguments, which is accumulator, which will have the final value that the execution will do. And the other one is the index, where like not the index exactly, but the in the array where we are, that value it will be there where we are looping on. So what it will reduce is the logic that we are giving the callback. It will go through all the, like it will execute the logic one by one on one of the thing, and it will store that value in the accumulator, and later on result that accumulator out of it, that we can store in variable or console, use anywhere. So my concept, what they are meaning by the reduce is we will give it a stream of values, and later on it will return out a consolidated result.
Okay. Consolidated result. Let consider if I'll ask you, like I've given you an array of numbers, and like you have to give me the second largest number in array using reduce method. Okay. Can you do that?
Second largest second largest number in the array. Yeah, we can do that.
Using reduce method?
Yeah, we can do that.
But it returns a single value, right? But you told reduce returns consolidated value.
We have to tweak the values. Like how the logic is written, it will also change based on that.
Okay, fine. Maybe later point of time we'll do some problem solving. Okay, we can have some React questions and we'll see. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So do you know what is code splitting? How React handles code splitting?
Yeah. So sorry. So in React, what we follow this component-based architecture. So each and every component we try to make reuse of it. So by React standard, it says like uh, make every component like as small as possible and make it as reusable as possible. So React basically do the standardization of helping us splitting the code. Let's say in a simple example, if you are building an social network website like Twitter, we will have a notification, we will have a card. So this card will have user details on top, and then at the bottom we will have the images, and then we will have the comment section and all. So here the code splitting, it says based on this, like if you're building that card, then divide it into three different sections, three different components inside a folder like card, and then let like these three components will be part of that card, and that container will just be used abstractly. So yeah, basically here we are supporting this concept of splitting the code into the components and making it reusable and modular and easy to maintain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you used React.memo function?
Mm, I've been using hooks, so I think use memoization is the one alternative for this one. I have used that.
That is called React.memo.
I think React.memo is there in the class-based architecture. There are two ways of implementing components in React. So one is class-based and the other one is functional. So React.memo, in the recent like when in the earlier part when I was building the React application, that time we were having class-based architecture for the whole thing. Later on we moved to the functional. So I had very little hands-on experience on that code. So after that, when we move to functional one, we have a simpler alternative, like similar alternative for that one, which is a use memoization. So that one we were using mostly.
Okay.
It basically does the same thing as memo only, but it's just hook-based implementation of the same.
So have you heard about this word memo, which generally imported from React, not use memo.
Yeah, memoization only.
Okay. Can you give me tell me concept of lazy loading in React?
Okay, lazy loading. So lazy loading is functionality is a feature provided by React where we are loading some heavy components or some components that are not required at that instance. So that can be awaited, and we are loading it on a later point. Basically, loading them on demand, and it's basically in async operation. And what we are doing is we are importing a component, and it is asynced. So if it is a heavy component, it will take some time to load. Meanwhile, we will suspense this. We will provide a suspense fallback page where we will show either a loader or something, and then we will load the same we will load the component a bit later, so that it will not what I say it will not bring up the initial load of the application higher.
Okay.
Okay. I think I might not be that clear for the question on this one.
Okay. Have you heard about React suspense?
Yeah.
What is that React suspense? Can you give me?
React suspense basically async the component, it keeps it keeps a placeholder for the upcoming component that will be loaded later. So suspense comes with the lazy loading only. So when we are lazy loading a component, suspense in that specific, like it's a container in which we are loading that lazy loaded component. So suspense will take up one argument it will take, which is fallback. So this fallback will have another component which is a very lightweight loading or something that we can use, and it will basically keep it as a placeholder until the main component loads up. So yeah, that's a responsibility of suspense.
Okay. So have you used can you tell me what are the hooks you have used?
I have mostly used use state, use memoization, use callback, and one more thing, use state, use effect mostly, use ref sometimes. Yeah, that's pretty much.
Okay.
There are new hooks also, use context, and there are use reduce state is also there.
Use callback hook?
Yeah, use callback hook. I've used it. It's basically when we are checking for a component for its side effects, for if it is loading later. In the use effect, we are using that component, and basically we don't want to render it every time the new method is loaded. We don't want to re-render that method, that component, just because like every time when the method is initialized, it will have a new method reference. So to stop that, we are using use callback.
Okay. Let's consider one of my UI using React is renders randomly, unnecessarily renders. So how can you minimize it?
Can you repeat the question again? I didn't got it
Like
clearly.
I have built a website and it renders unexpectedly, and most of the time it renders unnecessarily renders. So I want to avoid this unnecessary render.
Okay. First, we have to check if the passed on props, like if we are using states correctly, state will not allow us to re-render it. And okay, you are saying that the component itself is re-rendering differently, right?
Yeah.
So we can provide it an ID. So the React engine will check if the same ID exists, and there is nothing in, there is no change inside the component, then it will not re-render it again.
Can you use memo?
We can use, again depends on the scenario, like inside the values, if the passed on arguments are changing, then definitely we can use it. If they are not changing, then we can make use of the use memo. Yeah, we can make use of it.
How can you optimize a network request? Like in a scenario where a slow and unreliable network is slow and unreliable.
So we have to optimize our page, or we have to optimize the API?
Yeah, network requests you have to optimize.
I'm not sure what we can do here, but I can say like if we have multiple API requests, we can, instead of calling them separately and making separate calls, we can use promise all to just collect them and call them once. That would definitely give slow down. We will give us some performance enhancement in this case, I think.
Okay.
Like clubbing up the network calls together and then using it, and then again using some maybe loaders or something to showcase that data is still coming on.
How can you implement offline support? Can I implement offline support for for some network calls?
Yeah, we can do it. One thing here is like the memoization you were saying. We can use memoization. We can store the data locally and show it, and let the API calls do the, like when the data is fetched and it will be back we can show them that refresh data, and yeah, basically those we can store the assets in the local memory of the browser, and also some data that we can use, and we can have some logic which will check if the data, what's the expiry of that data, and then once the new data is fetched, we can just remove it and fetch it with the newer one. So once every time the user, if they are not clearing up the memory, they can still get the last stored version of the application, uh, and as soon as it's connected to web, we can still load it up.
Okay. So have you used socket? Anytime you have used sockets?
WebSockets I haven't used. Yeah, used.
Okay, 1 second. Okay. So have you used cookies?
Yeah, cookies I have used.
So can you tell me a
Cookies,
scenario? Yeah.
yeah, so cookies we have used for basically storing some lighter information like some flags, themes, which one to show, and mostly that sort of things only. We were more heavily using IndexedDB than this one, cookies.
Okay. Okay. Let's consider. I have given you an array of numbers. Can you give me permutation of that number?
I have to code it right.
Yeah. Can you share your screen and write it? I need all the permutation of this number present in the array.